Tonight's Modern Men is powered by the Hero Initiative. Interested in becoming a hero? Go to heroinitiative.org to see how you can be a hero to those comic creators in need. Hey, how's it going, guys? We are not live here on Monday. Yeah, unfortunately, this doofus had to work again. So we're recording a premiere for you, so hopefully you guys enjoy tonight's show. We've got a lot planned, but before I talk about those plans, I got to get into the panel because I feel like it's dangling above me now since I'm on the bottom for a change. But Andy's beard is so majestic. It's flowing into the next screen. Andy, how's the beard?
I tell you what, Carson, this beard is one hell of a hoot. Hopefully I don't get judged by a court of owls. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. That would be devastating. And what is going on? Drew, you got a little something on your face there. Drew, how you doing, Drew? You doing all right?
I'm doing all right. I'm putting in the work. You know, we got a grassroots movement over here. I'm coming for your title, Andy.
You got to do the reps.
Look, I'm putting in the reps. It's
all right. Oh man, but all fun and kidding aside, we got some great topics for you tonight. We're going to talk. Last week we talked about our 5 most underutilized or underrated characters. This week we're turning everything on its head, like, well, the Court of Owls, basically. We're going to talk about the most overutilized or overrated characters. It's those characters that are like, you know, when a new team's formed and your favorite Marvel or DC book, you're just like, why is that guy on that team? He's in the other 10 books he's into. Or they announce a movie with a team or another movie with this guy and a property. And you're just like, again, I just saw this guy's origin like 6 years ago. Why do I need another one? So stay tuned for our list. We each made top 5 on who we think are overrated and overutilized. And also, based on your poll results last week, we read Batman, The Court of Owls, one of the launch titles for the DC New 52. So I'm really excited to talk about that. But we here at Modern Men, we love gimmicks. We decided to make a new gimmick, and that is called the wild card rule. So basically what that means is anytime within the next, let's say 25 episodes. I don't know why I just threw that number out there. So basically each of us gets like a wild card, which I will use this Excalibur #1 card. I don't want to read this, but let's just use this card as an example of a wild card. And each of us has a digital wild card. At any time, like Drew or Andy or myself really has a read we want to review on Modern Men, we throw down that card. We say, next week we're going to be reading this and invoke the wild card rule. So this can occur anytime in the next 25 episodes. Obviously, we do have other special events planned among the 3 of us. For instance, next week, Why the Last Man, that can't be negated by the wild card rule, obviously. We pretty much have weeks 40, 45, and 50 planned out because that's what we do on Modern Men. So, Drew, what do you think about the wild card rule?
I love this wild card rule, Seawood. I think it's probably the best idea that we've come up with. I can't remember if it was your idea or it was my idea. I know it wasn't Andy's idea.
I'm only here for the beard.
I think that we should actually open up the wild card rule to more participants as well in the future. And maybe just maybe, our loyal viewers can purchase a wild card for themselves with those proceeds going to the Hero Initiative. So maybe we'll expand upon this in the future. I think there's just all kinds of possibilities for me to make you guys read books that would never win the poll.
Except for Marvels.
No, that Marvels has been disqualified. Marvels and V for Vendetta have been retired. We tried and they failed.
Many times.
So, many times. We're looking forward to the future, not back to the past. This is Modern Men, okay? Not wallow in pity men.
Andy, you got any ideas on the wild card rule brewing?
Oh, dude, Carson, man, Drew, I love this idea. This is going to be fantastic to sneak in some of those 90s Punisher reads and just blindside you guys with a little bit of 90s love, you know?
Absolutely. I know. I can't wait. Hopefully people like the idea. Like Drew said, we kind of talked about expanding it to the hosts of the Comic Core, but I figured like if we give so many of these things away, we will just never have a poll. It'll just be someone's like, you guys are reading this week. Like give one the JD over at Golden Guys. They're like, you guys are reading Darth Vader all the time. Every
read Silver Surfer Black.
I wouldn't mind reading some Silver Surfer.
That might end up might end up being one we do.
But we still want to do the polls, so that's why we're not giving too many of these things away. But let's go ahead and get in to Batman Court of Owls. So this one, I was actually kind of shocked this won our poll last week, but I was very happy as well. I have this beastie of a book. This is the Absolute Edition of Court of Owls. For some reason, I still read it digitally because my iPad was next to me when I wanted to read it, and not this. But yeah, I like this book so much. I actually got the Absolute, and I actually got it signed by Greg Capullo and Scott Snyder in 2016 at C2E2. And Scott Snyder left the note, the court is watching you. So hopefully the Court of Owls, based on what Scott Snyder let me know, the court is watching. So this was one of the launch titles for the New 52, and probably, in my opinion, the most successful of all of the New 52 books. So in 2011, November 2011, DC decided it was finally time to scrap most, if not all, of continuity, and they basically pulled Flashpoint, which people like it. I'm not a huge Flashpoint guy because basically it was just a quick way to get from point A to point B, and they cherry-picked the things they liked in certain books, and they scrapped other things. For instance, Superman Family, most of their stuff got scrapped. They got rebuilt from the ground up by Grant Morrison and others. Wasn't exactly the best of books. However, the who benefited the most was the people who retained continuity. So you had Green Lantern in 2011. Pretty much all of the Jeff Johns Green Lantern more or less just kept getting pushed forward into the New 52. So you could almost just read that, like issues 1 through 66, I believe, of the Jeff Johns, and then read the New 52 issue 1. It's like there was never a break, basically. Batman, this is where, like, and you guys can talk about it once we start getting into the book, but basically this is where I talk about they cherry-picked the things they really liked and just kind of ignored the things they didn't like. For instance, the first few issues of first few pages, I should say, you see the Robins that Batman has under his wing. And somehow within, I think, 6 years of time, if I remember right, he already has Nightwing, Tim Drake, Jason Todd would have been in the middle. You don't see him in this book, but he was there. And then you get the Kid Robin, of course, too. Damian, yeah, sorry. I don't know why I couldn't think of Damian, which he was just introduced in the mid-2000s as it was. So you get Damian on top of all that. So the first thing I did when I opened this up and got reminded of the short time and all of these Robins is basically Batman would have had to have a Robin a year for Flashpoint and the Batman continuity to make sense. So just a small, fun example of the New 52 continuity. So going into all that, Drew, what were some of your first thoughts on the New 52 and then going into the Court of Owls?
I think that if you don't pay that much attention to Flashpoint and where it started, you don't put too much pressure on that timeline, and you just let Batman be Batman, which is kind of what they did. They looked at, what's selling right now? Oh, Batman and Green Lantern. Okay, well then when we do that line-wide reset and reset everything, we're not going to touch those things because they're working. And I think that the Snyder and Capullo run as a whole got away from the Bat family, with the exception of that Death of the Family story arc that they did kind of in the middle. But the Bat family, for the most part, was not a part of that. A lot of it was 0 year flashing back where there's no Robins, where the current stuff was done Batman solo, no Robin. There was a Batman and Robin book at the same time that Peter Tomasi was writing that was fantastic. Really, really great run. But Batman and Robin was not a thing in the Batman title. It just kind of was a whole lot of exploration of him in a way that kind of harkened back to the dark horror elements of Batman for the most part, and kind of the detective elements as well, and didn't really put him in a position for the Bat family. Alfred was more part of things than any other character. So I think it actually really worked. I remember initially hating the suit design of the New 52 Batman. And just like it looking like armor and having no, like, it looked padded, and it had no trunks, which I found like nothing broke up the pattern. Through actually reading this book and enjoying the Capullo art page to page, I really enjoy the way that Batman's designed in this. I think it really works, makes him more tactical. But yeah, the whole New 52 thing for me was it was good for me because I'm not a big DC guy, so I could kind of cherry pick what I wanted to read, because it didn't hinge on so much of what had happened before. But the things that I knew about Batman were still ever present in this Batman book, and it didn't confuse me in any way.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, Andy, this Batman book was almost tailor-made to a reader like you. It was a new #1. There was supposedly no previous continuity you needed to know about. So, Andy, cracking this open for the first time, and I know you don't read too much DC or Batman. What are your thoughts on this?
So if Drew is not a big DC reader, then I live in a void completely absent of DC. I just don't read a lot of DC. That's changing a lot lately. I'm going to be very honest and very blunt up front. Batman bores me. Batman has never excited me. It's not something I've ever really been into. And when I see a Batman book, I just never picked it up. That's changing. This book is helping to change that for me, along with some other reads that you guys have opened me up to. I was greeted with a very dark, very gritty Gotham. Capullo's pencils were fantastic in this. Just those first pages of the villains coming in and Batman battling them in, and then with the twist with the Joker in there, which ended up being was it not Damien?
It was Dick.
Dick, yeah. That twist with that mask and the tech helps kind of erase the thought train and that thought pattern where I feel like Batman's always been a boring character because he's got the tech. These first 6 issues really, we talked about a little bit earlier ago, where it really brought in some of the detective work that he'd been doing. You guys are swaying me. I'm not gonna lie, you guys are definitely swaying me.
Yeah,
Batman's at his best when he has toys, in my opinion, and he's given the toys in this run.
Absolutely, yeah. My favorite part, and I would like, especially like when you're watching a Batman movie and that stuff. My biggest critique of whoever's creating Batman, that stuff, is always like, do they remember he's actually detective? Like, there's been several movies that have been made, and even like our favorite ones from the Christopher Nolan ones, he doesn't do that much detective work. So in my opinion, it's not always the greatest Batman, but in this one, he does a ton of detective work in this to try to figure out like what the Court of Owls is, like from a folklore or fairy tale, basically a nursery rhyme, to the point where he's exploring like Old Wayne Tower and analyzing why each gargoyle's on the tower. And just like you said, getting into that Gotham stuff. Like basically when Snyder wrote this, he basically explained that like, Gotham's almost another character in the book, which I completely see, especially in this first volume when he starts off with the speech about Gotham is, and how it was like it published in the paper since he was a little kid. And, readers will report in on, what Gotham is. And of course, there's not a definitive answer to that, even though he's like, I'm kind of partial to Batman, but I understand that, Gotham is bigger than Batman even. So, it was a big deal getting Greg Capullo in this book as well. I remember, getting ready to start collecting the New 52 stuff. I'm like, they got the guy who does Spawn to do Batman. And I thought that was such a weird choice, especially since they came off of, I believe it was Tony Daniel was on Batman on Detective. They had Jock and Francisco Francavilla, which they're all amazing artists, of course. But Greg Capullo, I thought he was going to be one of those guys, kind of like your writers now. They just stay independent forever because they get a little bit more paycheck. But DC, they forked over the money and got Capullo and have kept him happy ever since. So I love this run. I don't know what else to say.
Well, there's three key points that really sold me going into this book, that really kind of drew me in and erased that annotation or thought in my mind of this is going to be a boring Batman read. And that was that very first panel, that very dark, gritty Gotham, right? And that first sliver of that panel was that theater. So where did my mind go at the very beginning? Well, was that the theater that his family left that night that they were killed? Oh, that's kind of cool. You know where I'm at with that. That kind of drew me in right there. And then what continued to sell me was I really liked the depiction of Commissioner Gordon in there. A little cartoony, but I did enjoy that. The Bat Cave. I think I passed it. The Bat Cave, where they actually paid homage to the original Batmobile in there from 88 or 89. Oh, that was cool in there. That was super cool to see that in there and a lot of the other toys. But then that next panel that really sold me on how awesome this read was going to be was when him and the detective were in the apartment of that murdered gentleman and they were going over the crime scene. I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. We're actually going to do some sleuthing here, right?
I think Batman works best when he's like a combination of Sherlock Holmes and Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's like you have to have that gothic horror element and that detective element, that mystery element for everything to really work well together. And I think that Snyder and Capullo are the best team to inject that gothic horror into this book. Just the way that it looks and the way that it reads, such surreal, mind-bending horror elements to this book. And the depictions with the art are just on point. But Snyder doesn't forget that he's a detective. Snyder puts him doing the work, having the gadgets, knowing where to look, and finding twists and turns that drive this story in a way that you just aren't getting in a lot of modern Batman books.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. My next question, Drew, is what did you think about the Court of Owls in general? Was it a lot of just BS trying to get from this seedy underbelly of Gotham ran by this like crazy Illuminati obsessed with owls, or did you think it was like a really smart twist that Snyder brought to Gotham?
I enjoy the Court of Owls immensely as a story device and as an idea that would be persistent in this continuity. I like the Court of Owls as this Illuminati. You said it. It's this 1%ers, right? So they're crazy rich people who are like, okay, we're gonna mold the world in our image and what we want out of things. And it's kind of like Hellfire Club for the DC universe.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they also have this like kind of anonymous thing where they're all wearing the masks. So as long as they're in the club, it doesn't matter who they are. They don't want anybody really to out them. It's a secret. I think the Talon is a really killer design for like an assassin that and ends up being less a character and more like a foot soldier kind of deal. But the Talon is super duper cool. Initially, I thought that when I first read this, my first thought was Owlman, right? From the Injustice Society or whatever the hell they call themselves, the Earth 3, right? I thought that this was going to be some sort of Dark Knight's Metal interdimensional Owlman thing. And I'm kind of disappointed it's not. But I do like the Court of Owls. I like the stuff that they set up in this first issue with Dick Grayson, or this first run with Dick Grayson, that Tinian pays it off actually in Batman and Robin Eternal, which was a weekly. Like at towards the end of the life of the New 52. It also goes into Robin War as well. The Court of Owls is a part of that, and their obsession with Dick Grayson it goes actually further than their obsession with Batman. So there's a lot of story to be mined from this group, and I really enjoyed it, man. I thought that they flourish more after this initial 6 issues than they do here as like a shadowy organization. It's like once they're out of the shadows, there's more fun to be had, in my opinion. But as a shadowy mystery, kind of this weird nursery rhyme that Batman has to, dig up the body of his like great uncle to find out, that they stabbed him. It's just this really weird, twisted story. And it's this one thing about Gotham that has been sitting under Bruce Wayne's nose this entire time. He knows Gotham better than anybody, but he didn't know about the Court of Owls. So I really dug it. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I think the first person actually mentioned the Court of Owls in the book was like Harvey Bullock when they're looking at that corpse for the first time, and he's just like, "What do you think, Bats? You think it's actually the court?" And then Batman like immediately cuts him off. He's like, "It's not the Court of Owls. That's ridiculous." And then it turns out like Bullock was actually kind of right. So I thought that was. I always liked Harvey Bullock, especially back from the animated series. But Andy, what were your initial impressions of the Court of Owls?
I was immediately drawn to this because of the mystery, right? The shroud, the not knowing. How often do you, like I've said, like I've looked at Batman books and not read them and not picked them up because you see Joker, you see so many of the same villains, Bane. This was shrouded in mystery for me as a first reader of this book. And just the elements that Snyder added in there that were super cool, going back to the 1880s and what was it, Bruce Wayne's great-great-grandfather, back that far, and then to talk about how they built all of the buildings with the superstition of the no 13th floor, but they leave the dead space to keep all of the bad mojo in there, and then they find out that that's where all of these secret layers are hidden through all these buildings. I mean, that was super cool. That was like right under his nose, kind of hidden. The idea of this layer underneath Gotham, though, seems a bit silly considering Bruce Wayne spent millions and millions of dollars and years of time developing and knowing everything that there is about Gotham. But so there's a little give, a little take. But I was sold. Because there's a lot of mystery here, and I unfortunately didn't think about it. I didn't download book 2. Book 1 was a fairly short read. I should have went and got book 2 downloaded and just kept going. Because even though we're doing 1 through 6, I probably could have gotten the 6 through 12 done before we recorded tonight.
I'm telling you, you'll enjoy this entire run if you like this stuff. There's some prequel stuff in here with Riddler at 0 Year that I really, really enjoy. That is not for everybody. And there's a point where Batman forgets he's Batman. And Jim Gordon and the GCPD get some super duper funding, and he becomes like Mech Batman, and that's actually really cool stuff with Mr. Bloom as a new villain, which Mr. Bloom is a very, very fun villain. I very much enjoyed that super heavy story arc they did. And then they did Endgame, where Batman came back and the Joker came back, and there's all kinds of cool stuff. It's just, and also Death of the Family, which was like one of the best Joker stories that they've ever done, and it's just really killer. Joker gets his face cut off, comes back, steals his face, staples it back onto his head. It's just, the Capullo art is just fucking insane. There's no other way to say that. But it's just, this whole run, man, this is really killer. And this is a good place to start.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of Capullo art, man, you even get a scene in this book where you're viewing Commissioner Gordon and the doctor doing the autopsy, but you're viewing it from the body cavity of the victim out through the wound. I'm like, oh, that's disgusting, but it's dope. It's from a perspective, it's like, yeah, that's actually pretty dark and twisted.
And then, yeah, we were talking about the art examples too. I was going to ask you guys what you thought about this whole sequence when he's in like the Court of Owls maze, where literally the entire book is starting to turn sideways, until the point where every page is just completely upside down. So,
all right, I'm gonna get spicy here for a minute. I've said for the last couple of weeks that I'm getting really tired of reading books digitally. And the reason why I do it is out of convenience, right? Because I want to support my LCS and buy these books where I can, or try to order them off of Amazon where I can get them pretty quickly. I wasn't able to get this fast enough because my LCS was completely sold out. So I read it digitally. But then the book does this turn and spin and upside down. I'm like, this is a really cool, dope gimmick to throw into this book, unless you're reading it digitally, because your screen, unless you remember to lock it, just spins on you. So I fought that screen before I realized I needed to lock it, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, like you hit the nail on the head for me too, Andy. Like, it's just the convenience of reading digital. It's an amazing experience, and the fact that it's so convenient, so in your fingertips. But like in particular, there's 2 issues of comics that you can almost not read digital in the modern era, at least, that come off mine. I think this was issue 3, if I remember right. Maybe it's issue 4 of this run. And then Silver Surfer, what is it, Drew, issue 11?
The Mobius strip issue, which is like probably one of the greatest single issues in comics history. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, you got to twist and turn the book. The thing literally weaves itself through the entire book like 3 times. So yeah, crazy.
And actually, you guys Drew, you're talking about like just the overall Snyder Capullo run of Batman, and I agree. I think it's like it just shows you, like, if you let a creative team have a little bit of freedom and let them breathe on a title for a while, they can make great things out of it. And I think that's what DC really lacked in the New 52, because I think they're the only team to run a book 52 issues basically, or basically it's 50 issues, because they did have a filler artist here and there, especially toward the end. I don't remember who did the issue 52, but I don't think it was Capullo. I think he just did the cover on that. And there's a single issue or 2 he missed in that run as well. And actually, Snyder didn't even do 52. It was Tynan. But yeah, they did most of this run, if not like every major story arc. But there's like no filler story arc. Once you get done with Court of Owls, it's City of Owls. And once you're done with that, you get like maybe the one Harper Row issue, I think it's issue 12.
Mm-hmm.
And issue 13, you're in Death of the Family. And then after that, you're in 0 Year. And then after that, Endgame. And then you get all the stuff with Jim Gordon. And the book ends with the Joker. So it's all really good. But yeah, my favorite single issue of the New 52 actually comes out of this run in the Batman Annual #1. And it's collected in trade #2, Andy, if you want to keep reading. It takes place during the City of Owls. And I don't want to spoil too much about it, but it's a Mr. Freeze-centric annual. And in that annual, you kind of find out about Mr. Freeze's past with his mother, the twist on the tale of his wife, Nora, and why Batman is trying to help, Nora not be with Mr. Freeze. So it's a nice alternate take on that famous Batman the Animated Series episode. And I think is by far the best single issue comic that they produced in the New 52. So,
also, there were two great weekly Batman series that were released during the New 52 years that Snyder actually broke the story on both with James Tynion, and somebody else worked on that Batman and Robin Eternal as well that I can't remember the name right now, but they were very much tied to this story, this arc, as well as kind of filling in the rest of the old Batman continuity into the New 52. A lot of the Stephanie Brown spoiler stuff was all brought in there. So you got Orphan in there as well. A lot more of the Robin stuff, the Red Hood stuff, all that stuff was explored in those runs, which were weekly Batman books, which were like kind of as far as the quality of art, up and down, but the quality of storytelling, really solid for, 2 weekly books that ran for, I think Batman and Robin Eternal ran for like 45, but 52 weeks on that first Batman Eternal book, and they were 52 great issues.
Mm-hmm. I still need to read all those, but I just remember on the main title, I said filler artists earlier, and by filler artists, I mean guys like Dustin Nguyen,
Yeah,
like really good artists, like Raphael Albuquerque, I think did an annual or two in that run. Basically, Snyder just got his friends to work on the book. I think Jock came back to the book for a little bit as well, so it's all definitely worth checking out. But since we're 30 minutes in, I think it's about time to get our final scores on Court of Owls. So. Andy, we'll go ahead and start with you. What is your final score on Batman Court of Owls?
Oh man, I'm gonna have to go 9.6 with this. I really am. Solid 9.6.
True.
I'm gonna go 9.6 as well. This is probably one of the best arcs as far as the whole run is concerned. I think that Volume 2 is probably a little bit better than Volume 1, in my opinion. And I don't think that this quite lives up to Scott Snyder's Black Mirror run as far as like modern Batman greatness. I think maybe Death of the Family probably comes in a little bit higher for me as well. So, yeah, it's just a really great place to start. A good mystery, great noir, horror, gothic feel to it. Snyder kills it on that. Capullo is just perfect compliment, and 9.6 is a great score, and I think that's where I'm going to stick it.
My God, I think we're going to have a first in modern men history here. I'm giving it a 9.6. I think this is the first time we've all three given a book the same score.
Woo!
So,
Where's the siren?
Woo! So, and I promise you, I didn't just say 9.6 to go with the crowd. I had 9.6 in my head from the beginning of the show, but basically, the only reason it's not a 9.8, I didn't really dig the whole book ending the story with the Dick Grayson. It just felt like a cheap plot twist to me, where like the DNA sample was Dick Grayson, and in the end he's explaining like, oh, you see Talon, it's like he did this like crazy dun 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 reveal where he's like, Talon is your great grandfather, and then he like punches him in the face, and then like a little owl tooth comes out or something. It's like that was a little bit far-fetched and goofy to me, but other than that, Greg Capullo's art, absolutely amazing. It's a great first run, basically. If you're wanting to get into Batman, like this is a great place to start, or suggest to somebody who wants to read a Batman book. Like there is, in my opinion, not too many flaws. Like they even kind of try to take 2 seconds. That's why he has like that little eye contact that at least like names people. So like he puts it on and tests it out on the Robin, so a new reader would know who all these Robins are right off the bat and that stuff. So I thought that was kind of like a nice, cool little touch. Like you can be experienced reading Batman, enjoy this book, but you can also be a first-time reader and enjoy this book as well.
Imagine how much, from my perspective as a first new reader who has no idea about the 3 different Robins and Nightwing, Dick, and Damian, and that whole ordeal, that cleared that up right away, because it's like, oh, okay, I've heard people talk about this now. Whether or not they play a major part of the story, I at least know who's who going forward on there. And you make a great point about the tooth and the owl tooth insert thing. The reason why I was held back from a 9.8 on this was a little bit different. Drew talked about it a little earlier about Talon kind of being like this super soldier, and there was a ton of them just there. That I feel took away from the character for me. Like I wanted Talon to be continue to be shrouded in mystery, and there to be more building and backstory there for that character. For him to just be one simple super soldier that's dead and gone, and now they just open up another one. I was like, no.
Didn't they do that with Talon, the series that like
I never
a Talon series? There was a Talon series.
I know, yeah, there was.
Where there was like one reformed Talon or whatever.
Now it's in dollar bins across America.
Yeah. Like Andy, do some digging. You could find you some more about Talon.
All right.
It's out there if you're looking for it, I'm sure.
Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed Court of Owls as much as we did. But, when we talk about Batman and characters like that, some may say these characters are overutilized or overrated. So that's going to segue us right to our topic tonight. We each came up with a top 5 list of characters where we kind of just think are a little overexposed. We don't necessarily hate these characters or dislike these characters. They may just be overused, so they're not as special when they're used in a good story, or basically it's just too much steak and not enough sizzle sometimes, as they say. So going into that, Drew, we'll go ahead and start with your number 5. I want you to talk about Wolverine, bub.
Now, this isn't the case as much currently in comics, but especially when I first got back into comics, there was Wolverine. There was Wolverine in the X-Men. There was Savage Wolverine. There was 2 different Wolverine miniseries running at the same time. There was Wolverine showing up in an issue of Spider-Man here. There was Wolverine on the Avengers. There was Wolverine on the X-Men team. There's just Wolverine on X-Force, like it's Uncanny X-Force now, and it's got a Wolverine on it. And then there's a lady Wolverine, and then there was an old man Wolverine, and then Wolverine was dead, but there's still 6 Wolverines, and it's just like, sweet Jesus, everybody wants to know who's playing Wolverine in the new X-Men movie, and all I want is to get an X-Men movie that probably doesn't focus on Wolverine. For Christ's sakes, everything is Wolverine, 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 Wolverine. And not that that's a bad thing, but like, how can I miss you if you don't go away for a little while?
Absolutely. I think we each have something to say a little bit about Wolverine. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep going with the list. Andy, I want to hear you talk about the Joker because that's your number 5.
So I feel like I'm picking the lesser of evils here on a list like this, but Joker, just every time I walk into the comic book shop, there is a book with him on the cover, or there is a book with him in addition. Like I said, I don't read a lot of DC, but I see a lot of what's on the wall and a lot of what's available. And every week it's something about Joker. We just recently had the movie with Joaquin Phoenix in, which sparked me to check out the Suicide Squad stuff. So it's like, I just feel like the last 10 months of my life has been I've been very aware of everything Joker lately.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Going into my number 5, I also picked the Joker. So Andy made a lot of points that I was going to make, so I won't get too repetitive. But just the fact that you walk in a comic shop and you have these black label books, it's like Joker, Killer Smile, and there was, Batman Damned, which is basically based off the Joker book they did like 10 years before. Not only that, and like Batman's main title, they just had I thought they just had like a Joker War with the Riddler, and now they're getting ready to have another Joker War called Joker War. And then there's a rumor to be this mythical 3 Jokers book.
Yeah,
I don't believe it.
We need 3 Jokers. Maybe Jeff Johns will tell us. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, I especially think he's been way overexposed on the movie side of things ever since. It used to be like Joker would be used every once in a while. It was pretty special, especially like heck, even in the Snyder run.
Oh, I love that. The fact that like it was the first New 52 Batman thing they did was take Joker off the board.
Yeah, right? They use Detective Comics issue 1. He rips his freaking face off, and you don't see him until Death of the Family.
And then he goes away for another freaking 2 years before he comes back for Endgame.
Absolutely. So yeah, they specifically took him off the board. So when he made that reappearance, it felt special. And now it's just like, oh, Joker's in the book, whatever. He's in another book too. But like I said, even the movies, ever since The Dark Knight, where Heath Ledger killed it on that Joker performance, they have found every excuse besides, Scott Snyder taking control. If there's no Scott Snyder, DC shoving Joker in your face. Like we got the awful Jared Leto Joker in Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
And like, you know what? We want to make a Joker movie, but then no one liked Jared Leto. So what did they do? They just completely came up with a new story. They got Joaquin Phoenix and made a really cool crime movie that had nothing to do with the Joker, but it was called Joker and somehow involved characters from Gotham City. I still don't know how that one worked.
It didn't work. See, wouldn't you want to hear me talk about how terrible that movie is? Find me talking about that movie at any point since it came out.
All right. I do want to hear you talk about Harley Quinn because that's your number 4, Drew.
Sweet Jesus. We're at the point where a Harley Quinn ripoff can sell books for speculation. That's how much Harley Quinn is out there. She's like Lady Deadpool, but not funny. And it's just like she's just too much Harley. Just too much Harley. She was great when she was just a Joker's girlfriend and she did her own thing, and that was kind of cool. The New 52 stuff. I like her series. I like looking at her in her movies. But like it's Harley does not have the level of character development outside of a Family Guy-esque superhero cartoon show to really carry a film by herself or in any way, shape, or form a comic book series. And she's all over a bunch of different ones, and she's just needs to go away. Just go away for a little while.
Yeah, and didn't they do the Old Lady Harley series end of last year too? That was
Yep.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, do we have a gimmick? Slap a Harley Quinn on it.
Yep. I got more to add to that in a little bit, but I want to hear Andy talk about Venom first.
Oh man, I hope I don't draw too much hate for this one, but Venom lately. Ever since the first movie came out, and was that 2 years ago now? Has it been that long?
Oh yeah, like October of 2018, I think.
So a year and a half. We're coming up on 2 years. Wow. That movie came out. Wasn't really well received at first. It got a little bit. People were swayed a little bit after a while, and then that just kind of built and built and built and built and built. And every time I turn around, whether it's ASM 300 that's picking up a ton of heat that people are talking about, or a lot of the Donny Cates Venom run that's been talked about repetitively over and over and over, and is an excellent read, but it's constantly being talked about to the point where Absolute Carnage too, that kind of go hand in hand a little bit. But I don't think there's a week that goes by that I'm not hearing something about Venom right now. Whether it's a new title or movie speculation or speculation on some of the older books, it's just kind of something that it's like I'm kind of ready to not hear a little bit and then get wowed by the movie trailer when it drops, right?
Yeah, to piggyback off that Venom point, like Drew was talking about how Harley couldn't carry her own movie. There's no way. I don't think Venom should have carried his own movie. I did not enjoy that movie at all. I thought Tom Hardy was awful in it. Like his accent was like, no, if anyone ever wants to criticize the funny voices in Batman or the Nolanverse stuff, like go look at Venom. Like I still have no idea what accent Tom Hardy was doing in that movie.
Right.
But it wasn't from New York, I can tell you that.
I think it was highly autistic.
Well, acting aside, Tom Hardy aside, I think what really puts that movie in the spotlight is was that not one of the first R-rated movies from Sony with a major character? So that, and shaky, some not so great acting, some not so great voices, but going forward, the possibilities are what people are really excited about, and it continues to build. And Woody Harrelson's role that's going to be played in that is pretty exciting in my opinion, but I digress.
Yeah, I can't wait to see him play Ronald McDonald. That'll be good.
Yeah, I can't wait to weigh in on Venom in a few minutes here.
Ronald McDonald.
All right, I'm going to talk about, this might be a bit controversial, but I think a lot of people actually agree with me. Batman. We just spent the last 43 minutes basically talking about Batman. We all love this character, but my God, DC, like, you have other characters at your disposal. You don't have to put Batman on every team and every book and every movie. And you don't put them in any TV shows for some reason. That's kind of weird at this point why you don't. But
yeah,
like, I just feel like if something happens to Batman and say the Batman title, it will not be reflected in Detective Comics. So it feels like they can't even manage like 2 books with Batman, but then you have him appearing in the Justice League and almost every incarnation of it. Any Black Label book has to do with Batman or any of his villains at any given time. There's probably always going to be a Batman book released every week. It just kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Joker. I feel like the less you use him, the more special his appearances are. which that could probably be said about any character, but I feel like, you know, Batman is just oversaturated. Like all that stuff Drew talked about with the weekly Batman titles, I remember, you know, I didn't have time for those titles. Like, so I had no idea what happened with all of that stuff. But I think one of my favorite Batman titles ever was Gotham Central, just because they made it a point not to have Batman in a Gotham title. And it was great. Even though when he made an appearance, the cops got mad at him. They're like, no, we're doing our job. You stay out of it. So I just like that title because they basically made fun of the fact that like Batman was overutilized. So I think most people would agree there's a little bit too much Batman at DC right now. But let's see what Drew has for his number 4. Oh wait, he's at number 3 because he's also got Batman.
I'm just a little bit more fed up with all this Batman than you are, Carson. Just like one more notch. And I think that if you go down and check out Andy's number 3, just click that.
Yeah, we'll just reveal that now. So,
yeah.
I think that we just let's just have a little Batman sucks off. That sounded terrible. We're gonna have to edit that out. Batman. You know why Batman's on every book at DC? Because Batman's the only character at DC that sells books, and it sucks because the fact that like you slap Batman on it and it sells means that they're going to slap Batman on absolutely everything. It's just one of those things that you're just going to have to deal with because it's never going to go away until DC Comics goes away. People think that DC is a Superman brand. It hasn't been for quite some time. It's the Batman brand. They want to say, oh, Wonder Woman is part of the Trinity. She matters just as much as Batman. Bullshit. Neither one of those guys can even measure up to the level of sales and success that Batman has had. They always put their top talent on Batman, and they try to push as much Batman as they possibly can to you. Batman's in my Suicide Squad book. Batman is hanging out with the outsiders, making sure that Black Lightning doesn't screw up things. Batman's on the Justice League. Hey, you guys hear this little thing called Dark Knight's Metal? It was a Batman book. You ever heard this thing called Dark Knight's Metal Death Metal? I'm gonna guarantee you by the end of the whole thing, it's a Batman book. What is the Batman Who Laughs is the most saturated villain in the history of goddamn villains. But the fact that he's still Batman is such an oversaturated character that he's his own villain at this point. It's like, oh well, you know, how do we make these other characters more interesting? Well, make them Batman. The Flash, how do we make him more interesting? Red Death, make him Batman. The Wonder Woman Batman, make him Batman. It does. This guy, he's not selling enough books. Well, you know what we should do? Make him Batman.
You're right. Wow, you're absolutely right.
What's that phrase from the Boondock Saints? I can't go to the store for a pack of smokes without running into. I can't dig through a long box of comic books without running into 30 Batman books that I don't want to read that weren't great. It's everywhere. Like Drew said, constantly everywhere.
We're about to have 3 different live action Batman actors at the same time.
Yeah, that's
Skip. And that's if you don't count Ian Glenn from Titans, so it's going to be 4.
Oh God, I forgot that existed.
Oh boy.
Andy, any other notes on Batman before we move on to my number?
Just that, man. I can't dig through a long box at a flea market or at a dollar bin at a comic shop without running into a ton of Batman stuff that I'm just not interested in reading.
Picture Batman right next to you picking through the long box like, Andy, you need to pick that one right there.
No, as long as it's you in a Batman
suit. Remember that time I fought Clayface? It's right there.
Where are the Animal Man books? I can't. Oh, here's Batman. There's a ton of them. But anyway, I'm going back to my number 3. And Drew made a lot of good points about this character earlier, but I'm also putting Wolverine on my list. It got to the point where, like, I remember a time where Wolverine wasn't the leader of the X-Men and not even close to, like, being ranked close to the lead of the X-Men. And then all of a sudden, this movie in 2000 came out called X-Men, and it was a Wolverine movie with Rogue in it and other characters. And ever since that movie, and then X2 just put an exclamation point on the thing because that was basically like the Weapon X origin story added onto it. So since that, like, Marvel's main initiative with X-Men was like, how can we get Wolverine put over? Like he was basically like the Roman Reigns, to put it in wrestling terms, or the John Cena of your X-Men. Basically, like they gotta push Cyclops and Storm and the others. You guys go to the side. Everyone likes Wolverine. I just remember when that cartoon came out called Wolverine and the X-Men. I'm like, what? He's not the leader. Then they killed off characters. They made other characters pouty just to make room for Wolverine to be a part of the leadership team there. So only Charles Xavier talked to Wolverine. Later on, like they had X-Men Schism. So like, all right, cool. How's Wolverine going to get his own X-Men team instead of just X-Force? Like, oh, he's going to get Matt Cyclops. We'll throw him in another book, and then Wolverine will have his own yet cooler book, and then be the leader of the school somehow. It's just to the point, and not even the amount of like.
It was a cooler book though.
Team. It was a cool book. I did. But there was a point, like you said, Drew. Like there were so many Wolverine books out, it was ridiculous. Where it was like you had Wolverine, Wolverine Weapon X, Wolverine the End, Wolverine the best there is at what he does.
Wolverine Origin 2.
Wolverine Origins, Wolverine Origin 2. Like you could go on all day naming Wolverine books and spin-offs and miniseries. It's insane the amount they made. And then the New Avengers, he was in Uncanny Avengers too, I believe. Astonishing X-Men, like the 5 X-Men titles that were out at the time. He was a part of those books in one way, shape, or form almost every single time. So especially like late 2000s, early 2010s, Wolverine was like in every Marvel title. I think they put out a Ultimate Spider-Man issue 66. I could be wrong. They basically released the issue as a joke, and the issue starts off explaining that this issue is a joke. And it's just Wolverine and Spider-Man basically doing stuff, because every book at that time had Wolverine and Spider-Man in it. So Bendis is like, I'm going to make a book that's just Wolverine and Spider-Man hanging out, basically, because they should be.
I would read that because it sounds like a great book, but too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. Like I loved that what they did with Schism and how they made Wolverine the lead, one of the leaders of the X-Men, but never wanted to be. He was always reluctant about it, and he was one of those guys that like didn't want to be the guy making the hard decision and the right call, but ended up being the guy making the hard decision and the right call. And you respected him all that more for it, the more that Scott became a terrorist. So it was a cool character thing, but like at the same time, it's like, how many origin stories how many times do I need to see the pearls? That's how many times I need to figure out one more piece of James Howlett and Rose's relationship. Like, I don't care. You could try to make all of these tertiary things that are Wolverine's origin that make him uninteresting a thing all you want. I just want him dressed in yellow and blue and carving dudes up. Like give me that. If you could give me 8 books where that's happening, I'm fine with him having 8 books, but there's just not enough character that needs to be explored. Like, for a guy that has lived so long, so much of this dude's life is boring. Like, stop. Just stop. Like, oh, he went to Japan and he studied, Bushido. Okay. Yeah, and then he was like dishonored and he left. It's like, okay. And then he came back and he was dishonored again and he left. How many times is he going to go to Japan and, be dishonored? Like, just knock it off.
I was never a big Silver Samurai fan myself. But Drew, we're on to your second pick here. And Andy's already talked about this one, but you're going to get a chance to talk about it now. Venom. Or Venom, I like to call him, apparently.
We talked about that really, really shitty movie that they did. And I'm not going to mince words about it. That movie was not good. It was an unmitigated disaster. It's Fan Four Stick, Suicide Squad levels of Drek. And it's absolutely awful. I can't say enough terrible things about that movie. That being said, I thought it was a bad idea to begin with. You can't carry a movie when Spider-Man's not in the movie and he is intrinsically linked to Venom. Like, you cannot have Venom without Spider-Man in the origin. It just does not work. And how do you then make a next movie where you're like, oh, we're going to bring Spider-Man in? Why would you do it at this point? Like, it's too little too late, man. You can't salvage this thing. I'm excited about the sequel because of the director they got on board. But like, man, Venom is like, you talked about the comic series, man, into Absolute Carnage. How many Venomized covers are we gonna get? Right? Oh, how many? Oh, it's a new Funko Pop. Well, what is it? It's random ABC character Venomized. Oh, Jesus Christ, that's fine. Like, what do we need now? Like Archie Venomized, right? Like, oh, we're gonna finally get that DC Marvel crossover. It's gonna be Harley Quinn Venomized. Like, it's just putting black goo on something does not make it cool. Okay,
you get a couple of really good points. Go ahead, Carson.
Oh, I was just making a bad joke about Nickelodeon Slime Month. If you just saw like your favorite characters getting slimed and green goop, it's kind of like those Venom covers, in my opinion.
Right. It's like, oh, and then they're like, oh, well, this Absolute Carnage is going to include everyone who's ever had a Venom symbiote. Well, that's just everybody. That's too many people, Donnie Cates. Yeah. It's just too many people. And then they didn't all show up. And then we got a Venomized Hulk, which was kind of cool-ish. But like at the end of the day, it's just a Hulk with some goo on him. Like all the putting a Venomized symbiote on somebody does is makes them susceptible to fire and sonics. And then like the rest of it is just like, oh, he's got tentacles. Like
he gets some endurance.
Okay. Well, that tentacles.
Venomized T-Rex from last week.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. That's a Venomized T-Rex. That's fine. As like a one-off in an Elseworld story. I'm fine with that. Right? What I don't need is 45 Venomized B players from the Marvel Universe for no reason whatsoever. Like Deadpool Back in Black. We didn't need that. Who needed that? Wait, hey, you know what? Guess who's overexposed already? Deadpool. Guess what we're going to do? We're going to give him one of them fucking symbiote things, man. Cover him in that black goo. That'll sell some peach momokos. Like, what the fuck?
That's funny you mentioned Deadpool because he's number 2 on my list. So just like Wolverine, like talks of a movie and other fans being bitter about a previous appearance in a movie, all of a sudden in the late 2000s generate a lot of interest in Deadpool that has skyrocketed ever since. So a character who, in my opinion, it's debatable if he can carry one book. He's had some good runs. Joe Casey did some great stuff with the character. I really enjoy the Jerry Duggan, Brian Posehn run, I think is my personal favorite. But beyond that, there are a lot of memorable Deadpool stories for me, but I think there was a time where Deadpool, correct me if I'm wrong, Drew, I think he had at least 4 to 5 titles that he was featured in monthly for at least like a few months.
Probably a legit half dozen titles for over the course of 5 years. There was at least one a month coming out and at least one a week coming out and at least one $10 oversized, overstuffed special issue every month for the course like 5 years.
Yeah, I remember they did a Deadpool 900, even though that he may be close to 900 at this point. Who actually knows when you're appearing?
That included all of the Deadpool team up books.
Oh,
yeah.
And they did a Deadpool 1 million, I feel like, or maybe it was 1,000. I can't remember. See, oversaturation, it really fogs up the memory when it's all combined and jammed together. But not to mention the fact he was like featured in X-Force and that stuff on top of everything else. So he was featured in team books, but it seemed like the second you thought it was going to die down, they actually saved Deadpool in the movie universe. So then it just went right back up. So yeah,
let's be honest. Let's be honest. Ryan Reynolds is carrying Deadpool, right?
Oh, absolutely.
If it wasn't for Ryan Reynolds, that Deadpool wouldn't be where he is right now.
I agree.
I tend to disagree on that. I think that the Deadpool books, if you read Deadpool consistently, Deadpool is kind of the style of book at this point. That if you are a fan of that kind of slapsticky character who breaks the fourth wall and has reference humor in the book, Deadpool will always be a solid buy. And it's a lot of it is low hanging fruit, but there are certain writers that know how to navigate that and certain ones that don't. And some of these runs are memorable and some of them are not. But much like Batman, if you slap Deadpool on a book, it is going to sell.
And I think that's
Major X sold. And are you kidding me? Are you kidding? Like, are you kidding me? This guy kind of looked like Deadpool with the helmet on. And that book sold like hotcakes. What an unmitigated piece of garbage that was.
I don't disagree with you one bit on the books and their quality, but I think that's where Ryan Reynolds carries the character, because if it wasn't for that level of awareness, I don't think the books would see the sales that they do now. Even the quality of stories that they are, without that higher level awareness, how many people were drawn into buying Deadpool and collecting comic books that never would have before?
I would argue that is definitely a legit way of looking at it, and that could definitely be the way that the popularity of the character has blossomed. But I would also look into the fact that Deadpool has been this irreverent character like successfully and selling books before the movie came out. It's the fact that he was such a successful character that caused Ryan Reynolds to leak the footage, the test footage of his own movie that never got made, so he could prove that the internet wants it. I would say that Ryan Reynolds is a very loyal portrayal of that character, and I think that he does it probably better than anybody could. Yep. But I think that the viralness of Deadpool existed pre-Ryan Reynolds, and I think that he definitely picked up the ball and ran with it. But I mean, the Joe Kelly stuff, I mean, a lot of it, honestly, I think pre-Deadpool movie was the Killogy. So it was Colin Bunn actually did Deadpool Killustrated, Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, and Deadpool Kills Deadpool, which was just this really off-the-wall, zany, kind of slapstick, murder, ultra-violent like book that kind of broke all of the rules and was full of this reference humor. And these are books that were selling like hotcakes before the whole Ryan Reynolds thing. So I definitely think that it's been compounded, but he was a viral entity, I think, leading into those movies.
All right, so we're getting into our number one picks here. So let's see what Andy's number one.
Number two.
Oh wait, we didn't do Andy's number two. I'm so sorry. This is one I'm surprised no one picked it at this point. Spider-Man.
So seriously, this honestly should have been my number one pick. I should have flip-flopped this and moved this to my number one pick. Because you can't go anywhere without seeing Spider-Man. And Drew said it best earlier. It sells. Drew made a good point where too much of one thing isn't always a good thing. There's one caveat to that. Sales. Spider-Man. How many different Tushy? How many different characters?
How many different Tushies?
Yes. How many different Tushies off of the original Spider-Man do we have now that are so out there? I mean, people are speculating on that punk rock Spider-Man now too. I mean, there's so many far-fetched things out there that people.
You know where his first appearance is, though?
I don't.
It's in that Spider-Gwen book, so it's already a hot book. Like his first official appearance is in that Edge of Spider-Verse #2. So yeah, you're absolutely right, man.
I mean, there's some caveats here, and there's some different things to talk about. But I mean, like just like I said earlier, I can't flip through a dollar bin book with finding a ton of Batman stuff that I'm not interested in. Just the same with Spider-Man. Now, there's a lot of great artists and a lot of great writers and a lot of great reads in Spider-Man. But for me, I'm just not a massive Spider-Man fan. I'm a Spider-Man fan of Miles Morales, of some of the other characters. But yet, how many titles hit every quarter or every year related to Spider-Man? A ton, because it's going to sell.
Yeah, basically Spider-Man is probably one of those characters since probably the mid to late 80s who's probably had a book out every single week just about, whether it's been like The Amazing Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, Spectacular, or any variation of those over the years. So definitely. And then in the 90s, Todd McFarlane wanted his own title, so he called it just Spider-Man. So yeah, I definitely could see how. It was nice having him in Just Amazing for a minute once Dan Slott took over. That's kind of when I really liked it. I know
he was still releasing those 0.1 miniseries at the
Those-
same damn time, and none of those were any good. I'm going to go ahead and say that right now. Spider-Man, I don't think has reached the Batman levels of being his own villain. But we did get 2 different series called Spider-Verse, which is basically Crisis on Infinite Spiders. It's like everybody's a Spider-Man. There's everything is spider this, spider that. There's spider totems. There's weird robot piloted spiders and Leopardon from the mech from the Japanese Spider-Man. It's just spider everything. Everybody gets to be a spider. There's Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse. There's Tom Holland is Spider-Man in the MCU. We're getting word that there's going to be a Spider-Verse movie with live action, maybe Tobey Maguire. Who knows what's going on over there at Sony? They're trying to milk everything spider for all it's worth. But at the same time, man, not all of these are bad things. Spider-Verse was a lot of fun. Spider-Gwen is a character that's fun to explore. Miles is fun to explore. And I think the fact that they found a way to kind of slap any face on that Spider-Man logo and make Spider-Man kind of, because Peter Parker was always the everyman, right? Mm-hmm. But middle-class white guy struggling through life isn't the everyman for everybody. So I think they found a way to kind of take that Spider-Man story and make everybody the everyman. And the one drawback with that is like when he's everywhere, man, you can't get away from it.
Absolutely. So Andy, why we've talked about this character a bunch, so I figure we just go right into your number 1. Wolverine. So what say you on Wolverine, Andy?
I don't know. It just there's not a day that goes by that there isn't some sort of exposure in my life as far as Wolverine, whether comic books or movies or content. Or last year was a very long, heated debate about 180 versus 181. It's
180,
right? Like the community was hotly debating that again. And it just seems like every day there's something, whether it's old content or an older book or newer books or newer movies, Wolverine is case in front daily. Something I see on news feeds or Instagram feeds or Facebook feeds. So it's just hopefully things will quiet down a little bit and then get me really interested. Like, you guys really got me interested in the Old Man Logan. And then the more I started to look and the more I started to see how much they utilize the character, I'm like, okay, I'm going to pump the brakes here and see if they come up with something fresh in a while.
Absolutely. I agree with that point for sure. Like, do we need Old Man Logan? Like, well, we got to have a Wolverine when Wolverine's dead. It's like, so, okay, sure.
Dead Man Logan right after that, right?
Drew,
we had all new Wolverine and Old Man Wolverine at the same damn time.
Oh,
because middleman Wolverine was dead.
So, Drew, I hope you got your ranting shoes on, because number 1, John Constantine.
Fucking Constantine. Sweet Jesus. Does he have to show up in every animated movie? Does he have to show up in every, deceased book? Like, I really wanted to read Dead Planet. I was hyped about Dead Planet, and Constantine's in it. Jesus, it's going to suck. How many times is this fucking guy going to get his own movie or his own TV show only for it to be canceled? Because it's not good, because he's not a compelling character. How many times is Keanu Reeves not only going to be able to make this guy successful? Come on, like, you're talking about John Wick, and he couldn't make Constantine work. You know why? Because Constantine sucks. He's everywhere, and he needs to go away. No more Justice League dark animated movies with fucking John Constantine. What a joke. He needs to go away. Nobody cares about him. I don't want to hear about how great Hellblazer was for 12 issues 47 years ago. Just shut up and go away, John Constantine, you fucking twat.
All right. I don't know. I don't think I can follow. I was just going to say, I think the way they handle him in Legends of Tomorrow is just fine with me. He's basically just a side character that helps the plot move along when they want to involve magic based.
He's a side character that helps the plot go from I was reading this to I don't want to read this anymore.
Well,
I really enjoyed him in Sandman.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's your problem, not mine.
So my number one, I had to pick Harley Quinn. Holy crap! Like, especially right now, like she is the black label of DC somehow. Like that, I don't even know how many Harley black labels. I think there's Harleen, Harley Quinn, the Birds of Prey. There's the Cami Garcia like crime one, which I'm sure would probably be a cool book, but I'm not going to read it because I think it's like 9 issues or $6 a piece. And there's all these other Harley books. Not to mention they're getting ready to do volume whatever issue 75 of her main run. And I mean, I love me some Harley Quinn. Don't get me wrong. I don't hate the character at all. I really wish there was a world where it was just it was like one monthly written by Connor and Palmiotti. That would be great. But then they build stuff on top of that and over it. And like I said, the black label stuff, everything I read I actually kind of liked. I just don't want it all at the same time on the shelf together for $5 or $6 to $8 a piece. That's just too much Harley. Like that's why I really enjoyed. At least they did the Birds of Prey book where they brought in Amanda Connor to do the art. But come on, like, why do we need a main run title plus 3 titles that have nothing to do with continuity, plus a great cartoon series, which is great. But then the movies, a Suicide Squad. She's now in Suicide Squad for some reason since the New 52 said so. And she had that movie where she held back the Birds of Prey and they just destroyed most of those characters in the process. So, yeah, Harley Quinn's definitely an easy number one for me. Just too many dang books on the shelf. They did it one at a time and paced themselves. I probably would have all of them, but I will never have all of them because it's just too dang much to read for that character.
That's what I love about Tom Taylor's Suicide Squad right now. So I'm pretty sure there's like some sort of editorial edict. They're like, you have to have Harley on the team. And he's like, okay. He just ignores the fact that she's on the team. She's like hangs out in the background and occasionally pipes up and says something and has nothing to do with the story. And it's fantastic.
At this point, I'm just waiting for her to be on the Justice League. That's not even a joke.
I mean, she was in Heroes in Crisis whooping the Trinity with one hand tied behind her back.
Oh.
Why is she not on the Justice League? She's obviously more powerful than the Martian Manhunter. Why does he get a spot?
The DC Trinity, Drew.
Yeah.
Took on the DC Trinity in a handicap match and won.
Yeah, if Green Lantern, the ring guy, gets to be on the Justice League, why can't we, like, and how many Green Lanterns are on the Justice League? Why don't we just, there's only one Harley Quinn. Like, why not? Come on. At least she's better than Punchline.
So that concludes our lists of most overutilized characters. So, like, who appeared on all the lists? I think it was just Wolverine and Batman, basically. So it's kind of interesting to see that, like, not only did
Harley made both of ours, Joker made both of yours, Venom, mine and Andy's. But with a lot of parity in this league.
Yeah, me and you both picked Joker, I believe. No, me and Andy both.
You and Andy both picked Joker, yeah.
So a lot of duplicate picks. So I think there's a lot of truth to what we're saying there. So just found that, and we didn't plan these lists. We just kind of threw them on there, like, oh, you picked my pick. I'm going to keep my pick anyway. So it's not like we planned that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. All right, so now comes the time we hype next week, basically. So next week, we got a big one. As big as it gets here at Modern Men. We got Why the Last Man, Volume 1. It's going to be ComicManAndy's first time reading it. Me and Drew's probably read it a ton of times.
This actually will only be my second time reading it.
Oh, so. Really? Nice.
Yeah.
So it's only your second time. It's probably like maybe my 4th or 5th time reading the first trade. So really looking forward to getting your guys' opinion on that. And yeah, it's like I've said it many times on many live streams, but I think it's probably my favorite read post year 2000. So definitely, I hope we're not overhyping it for Andy. I know he's a Brian K. Vaughan fan. We've said it's a very good read. I can't wait to see. It all hinges what Andy thinks about this read next week.
Well, I mean, even better is I scored all of the hardcovers for $50.
Well, we really hope you like the first volume. You're gonna have to figure out something to do with those hardcovers.
Well, I can tell you what,
you build a fort out of them.
I tell you what, right now, if I don't like all of them, if I don't like the read, I can guarantee I'll sell all 5 hardcovers for my money back.
There you go.
That's true. I just hope you like monkeys throwing poop at people. If you do, you're in for a treat. If not, it's going to be a long haul, buddy. But anyway, we're also going to post a poll so you guys can vote what we're going to read for week 41. Because at this point, Andy, I know you want to read your stuff, the physical copies instead of digital, and it takes time to ship anymore and all that good stuff. And I know there's other people out there who they just don't get a chance in 3 or 4 days to read and review along with us. So hopefully, us opening the poll up and then closing it still on Thursdays, but then going a whole week trying to get that read and read it. Hopefully, it'll give more people a chance to actually read along and maybe go and get a trade from a shop or on Amazon or however they get it. It'll just be easier to get in your hands and on time this way. So we'll be doing the week 41 poll this week, and on the Why the Last Man episode, we'll do the week 42 poll, and then so on and so forth until someone throws the wild card rule out. But I think we have 5 pretty awesome picks for week 41. So the first pick is going to be Wicked and the Divine, Kieran Gillen. We're going to try it out once again on the poll. In my opinion, some of his finest work, maybe his best work, in my opinion, not to mention Jamie McKelvey on the art. One of the most underrated artists in the business, and this is the main book he's on. It is a gorgeous book with a great story. I can't recommend it enough. I could talk about this next book, but I'm going to let Drew do it instead. Chew, Volume 1. Drew, tell us about Chew.
I have Chew Volume 1, and I've never read it. I'm waiting for it to get selected on one of these poll things. So, if you want my 3 volumes of Chew to just sit on my shelf unread, I guess don't vote for Chew and vote for something else instead. But vote for Chew.
I mean, if you guys like Farmhand and the art and that, you owe it to yourself to vote for Chew. This was like Rob Guillory's breakout book. John Layman did an excellent job writing this one. I think that one runs 60 issues as well, if I remember right. And I got all 6 hardcovers over there too, and I enjoyed every one of them. So another great long-running title, but we're going to hopefully read. Actually, we're going to read the first and second volume of these, right, guys? That's what we decided, Andy?
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Yeah, since we got a little bit more time, we're going to actually review the first 2 volumes. So I should have mentioned that. Wicked and Divine and Chew will be reading volumes 1 and 2. So the next one will be reading volume 1 and 2 as well, because I think the story really gets a lot of room to breathe because of that second volume, and that's Invincible by Robert Kirkman. It is basically his tribute to superhero comic books via an Image title. Still, it's not for kids, though. There's a lot of fun gore in that one, but I think volume 2 of that book is really where that book gets its identity at and comes to life. So volume 1, pretty good, but volume 2 has a really crazy plot twist in it that really sets the pace for the rest of the book, in my opinion. Next up, Andy, I'm going to let you talk about this one, Gideon Falls.
So the same thing that you said about Invincible can also be said about Gideon Falls, right? Where they help paint a landscape on the first volume, and then they start really digging into that landscape on the second volume and really start putting some meat on the bones there. First volume is an amazing read, in my opinion. Second volume just capitalizes on that and really delivers something amazing from Jeff Lemire. So if you guys pick that, it's a pretty substantial, phenomenal read, in my opinion, too.
And then, Drew, this is your pick for the last one, Descender.
Yeah, more Jeff Lemire, but you got Dustin Nguyen on the art. The first volume of this is really classic, great sci-fi storytelling, and it's definitely got some legs that it's fun to dig into the second volume as well. So more Jeff Lemire. You can't go wrong with having a whole bunch of Kieran Gillen and Jeff Lemire hanging out in your poll gang.
That came out wrong too, but anyway, if you guys enjoy any of those reads, please go to the Comic Core channel community tab and give one of those 5 reads a vote for week 41. But yeah, obviously next week we'll be in Why the Last Man territory, and I cannot wait for that. But with all of this, it's time for closing thoughts and shout outs. So Andy, where can people find you?
You guys can find me here every Monday night, getting super amped and prepped to read Why the Last Man next Monday. And if you guys are still watching this, go vote on the poll. Vote on that poll. You got 2 weeks to pick something and acquire that read and read along with us, because that's a blast. Unlike the Wednesday show, we do read the chat.
Hey-o.
And you guys can, speaking of Wednesday show, you guys can find me there laughing my tail off, hanging out with those guys. And I roll that into Andy Given Thursdays, where we talk about something fun that feels like the community is interested in listening to. So Andy Given Thursdays, and pop over to my own channel, ComicManAndy, where I'm experimenting with some edited video. And you guys can find me on Instagram at ComicManAndy, and the Pinkies Out podcast on all your favorite podcasting platforms.
Man, the world is just full of Andy right now. That's a lot, man. Woo.
He's more oversaturated than the Wolverine.
I'm tired of Andy. Too much Andy.
Drew, where can people find you?
Oh man, I'm going to be dropping some recorded content on the Comic Horror this week. We're going to do another review video that will drop sometime Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon. We dropped a video last week running down all the solicits that were coming out for this week. So you can check that out and figure out what you're going to pick up when you go to the shop on Wednesday. We'll release another one of those this week so you can look at what's coming out next week. And beyond that, I might do something on my own channel. I got some days off this week. Maybe we'll sell some books or something. I can't make any promises.
Nice. Well, you guys can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Just search cwoodard19. I'm also a feature on the Comic Horror, of course, on this show. And Friday nights on the Roundtable, of course, with DruManchu, Cat Ren Figures, The Great Legends Show, and, of course, Comic Horror Chad.
I want to make sure you check those out live before we delete them.
Yeah, before half of us don't show up and the show gets deleted. But anyway, also on Comics of the Atom, the link should be down below. We'll probably be recording that next week. We're still chronicling the Grant Morrison Animal Man. We're taking it slow, but we're just enjoying it, like a fine wine at this point. So can't wait to keep reading. And Mike has not read all of Animal Man, so I don't know if he's familiar with the latter half of that book, but I can't wait to get to that part to see his thoughts on it. So
Buddy Baker.
Have a blast reading Buddy Baker and Animal Man, one of my all-time favorites. But, well, thank you guys so much for joining us for this premiere of Modern Men. Definitely don't forget to vote on that poll on the community tab. And until next time, we'll see you later.